Hello and welcome to Car Dealer Live. I'm James Batchelor, and today we are continuing our look at the auction sector with Manheim Auction Services. Helping us to understand what it's like sitting at the rostrum is Andy Conde, General Manager, Group Auctioneers at Manheim Auction Services. Hello, Andy.
Good morning, James. Good morning, everybody.
Lovely to have you on, Andy. Now, many of our viewers watching this will be familiar. You'll be a familiar face to them. And also, you regularly commentate on the used car market. But for those who are perhaps less familiar, could you just tell us about your career and what you do today?
Yes, I started off many years ago. First auction was back in 1980. So nearly over 40 years wielding the gavel. I always say that if I'm going to write a book, it's going to be called Cows, Cars, Cabinets and Cottages, because that's basically all the things that I've been fortunate enough to sell and many more. I've loved every minute of it. When I was a little lad, I only ever wanted to do two things. One was to be an auctioneer, one was to be a football commentator. And I used to get my granddad to take me to a local cattle market, and I used to stand on the bin afterwards with a piece of wood, pretend to be the auctioneer. And 40 odd years later, I became that auctioneer, and it's something that is, in my blood, and something that I've always tried to portray as being, that I enjoy, and enthusiastic about. So I think that's it from sort of where I've come from. And where we are now, it's changed so much. A lot of people in Manheim know that I'm the biggest Neanderthal we've probably got working for us when it comes to IT. But even I've had to adapt to where we are. We've got a team now of 16 group auctioneers around the country, and throughout the pandemic, we all found it pretty difficult. But the one thing we did, rightly or wrongly, we paired them up in twos, and we had everybody going to the auctions as normal. They didn't work from home. We felt for their own well-being, more than anything, that it was really good. We cared for people. We made sure they were safe, and I think it was certainly very well received by everybody. So big changes in the industry.
Yeah, well, we'll come back to those changes in a second, but I'm fascinated by the role of an auctioneer because I always think it's one of those roles where a lot of people think they can do it because they stand in the lanes, they see you being fantastic at your job, and they feel as though they can do it. But there's an awful lot to it, isn't there? A lot of research involved in all the cars coming through. It's very high profile, and of course, you've got an awful lot of responsibility, haven't you?
Well, it's about making sure, number one, you've got to know what you're going to sell. If you don't know that, then there's no point in doing the sale. So it's important that we walk the stock, we go through the catalogs, we earmark specific cars, and also not only the cars we're selling, but the people we're selling to. So real quality auctioneers will know who's going to buy or who's going to bid on a particular vehicle even before it comes to the auction hall. So they will know where to look. Buyers are creatures of habit. So those buyers that come to physical auctions will always stand in the same spot. So when we've ran for a number of years now the Auctioneers Academy, because we're really keen on bringing our own auctioneers through. And one of the things I've always said to the auctioneers is to draw a semicircle and put the initials down. You can do it before the auction starts. You know where everybody is, so you know exactly where to look. So you have to be in control. You have to be firm sometimes. You've got to make sure that you are in charge, because you can't have people shouting at you, and we do get that. You've also got to be entertaining. You've got to be interesting, and you've got to be really good at your job and understanding what's going on in the wider world. And obviously, communication is key. But it is it's an all-round job. And an old boss of mine used to say, a good auctioneer is a frustrated thespian, and I think that's it, because you do become an entertainer.
Well, I was just that you've just sort of dovetailed with my next point, really, was because there is a lot of theatricality to it, isn't there? And you are, I suppose, the best auctioneers are the ones who see it as a character, and they're living that character, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely, and that's what you have to do, And sometimes, it's difficult. Whatever's going on, you might have had a row with the wife, but you turn up and you've got to get on that rostrum as if nothing's gone on. Whatever's going on, and you've got to be the main man, and you've got to be, that person who everybody relies on, because they are relying on you. The auction centres rely on you to sell the cars. The vendors rely on you to get the best price possible. The buyers are relying on you to make sure that we don't miss the bids. And your colleague is relying on you to give them support. So it is, it's that sort of role. Bit of a cog in the wheel role.
Right, let's talk about business at the moment, because like you said earlier on, there's been a huge amount of change in the business over the past few years. How have your team of auctioneers taken to being back in front of a physical crowd?
Oh, we've embraced it so much. None of us could. We couldn't wait. Those early days that we were opening 2 or 3 auctions, and there were dark days that we thought we'd never go back to physical. I could never work for a company that didn't have physical auctions. To me, it's the lifeblood of what we do, and we were all so enthusiastic about making sure that we had people there, people in front of us.
So Andy, I mean, how do you manage that interaction between the people who are bidding online and the people actually in the room? Because of course it's got to be fair, it's got to be democratic, hasn't it?
Absolutely. So if we're offering a vehicle and you get a bid online, you obviously, like we normally do, who's going to give me whatever. And then you might have a bid in the auction hall. You have to remember to give that bidder online time. So the key is when the closing of that sale comes, before that gavel comes down, it's once, twice, third, and final time. So the man online or the lady online has a chance to bid. Now, there is a facility whereby they can tell us online, there's a may bid button. So they press it, it tells us they're going to have a bid. There's also a button that tells, we try and encourage our buyers, the I'm out button. So they press it and we know that they're not going to bid again. Some of our buyers online try to play cat and mouse, because what they'll do is they'll wait right until the last minute. And at the very last minute, they'll press that button. That's the thing. That we just have to be careful about.
Yeah. And because I'm very keen to understand buyer behavior, really, because I mean, since digital has become the prevalent channel for bidding, I mean, have you noticed anything different about buyer behavior? Has it changed a lot over the years?
When it has changed, you may get somebody that would have come to the auctions every week, only come in once a month. So they'll come once a month and they'll log in 3 times, or they may come twice and they'll go online twice. Has buyer behavior changed? I suppose we expected the more experienced buyers, shall we say, to come back. Those buyers that would always say, you can turn that simulcast off. We don't want that. We never buy a car online, and now doing it. They're buying cars online because we know it's easier. They don't have to drive 2 hours to an auction, 2 hours back. So their behavior has definitely changed. But I think those people that have come back, the real old hardened auction attendees, have really welcomed it. But again, as I said, it's all about the choice of what people want to do, where they're happy to sit at home or in an office, or where they're happy to come to the auction. And I think the other thing, for mental health aspect, I think coming back to the auctions is a massive, because people are sat at home, they don't speak to anybody, but they're able to come and see and talk to us and touch, feel. And I've always said that the auction hall, a car auction, a motor auction, cars or vans, is really the stock market of the car industry. You can read all these guides, glasses, guide, cap. There's no better guide to see what the value of a car is than stood there watching it in the auction hall.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my next question leads on from that, really, which is, you're at the front line, you're at the coal face, you're sitting there on that rostrum, and you've got a fantastic view of what's happening at the moment. What's your view in terms of stock availability and prices?
Well, I've never known stock to be so low as it is now. And because of that, we read all this about the economic situation, but there's still a massive demand for quality used cars. Mm-hmm. And when I say used cars, it can be up to 15 years old, because it's what I call those little pippins that people want to buy. And there's a number of issues. You look at the look at the infrastructure of our public transport system in the country at the moment. I don't know about you, I've got very little confidence in it. And if I have to, I'd rather drive somewhere. So I think people are looking to buy cars more than they were before to get around. The quality, the lack of supply of new cars is obviously a big concern. And I can't see that's going to get any better anytime soon. So people would rather buy a quality used car with low miles, well serviced, and it has to be, we're always saying this to our vendors, service histories, logbooks, everything that is really key when you come. You've got to present the car as you would want to buy it yourself. So I think all in all, there's going to be I don't see there's going to be massive stocks around this year. I can only see prices going one way, and I think that's going to be up. There may be a little bit of a blip because, in years gone by, you could write an auction centre. You could almost write a business plan. You knew exactly what was going to happen. March and February is going to be dear. It's going to drop off. It's going to even out. But I think it's far healthier now that we'll probably hit a plateau throughout the year. There may be a little bit of a dip come August time, which we saw last year. But I honestly can't see where any big supply is going to come from to feed the demand that we're seeing out there at the moment. And from our point of view, it's great.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But one thing that isn't going up at the moment is residuals, EV residuals. I mean, we're frequently talking about this at the moment. Are you seeing this being played out in the lanes?
Yes, I think what Tesla did shook the market, and I think they almost, the other manufacturers are almost a little bit afraid, and they've had to realign some of their prices. My advice to people who have got EVs to sell, you've got to hold your nerve. We've seen this in the past before. It's not that long ago that we saw VW going through a phase whereby there was all this thing about diesel Golfs and all this, and people need to be careful, don't want to be buying them. You know what? It eased off and then it came back. You've got to hold your nerve. That's my view. There will be some, if I'm honest, to try and sell some of them is really tough. Can't get bids, getting bids considerably below what cap is. I don't really know what cap value is on an EV anymore. I'm not sure what anybody else does. I think we need to be really careful with that. But they will come back. I think we've got to. There's two quick fixes in my view. Number one, I wouldn't go around the country putting in new charges up and down the countryside. What I would do is I'd repair the ones that we've got and go around everywhere to make sure that at every service station, every EV service point is working. And number two, I bring a subsidy back in for electric vehicles to be charged at home. And I think they're the two things that I would do as a quick fix. But apart from that, look, we're being pushed into it. I'm speaking to people that think hydrogen's the big thing. Who knows? I'll be long retired by the time I have to worry about hydrogen and things like that.
Well, that's something for your autobiography, isn't it? Really?
True.
Let's just briefly talk about performance of used cars going through the lanes at the moment. Is there a big difference between online and physical at the moment?
On things like what we call grade 1 and grade 2 cars, which are the ready to retail stock, there's very little difference, because the used car supermarkets and all those top buyers are quite happy to sit online and buy cars. So there hasn't really been a massive uplift in prices. But where there has been an uplift in those older grade cars, and twofold really. Your buyer online wants to buy a car that comes in, he maybe wants to buy a Mini, but his condition report says it's a grade 4 bordered on a grade 5. And he's a bit, shall I bid on this or not? But what happens then is the man in the hall starts to bid on that car, and the man in the hall then gives the people online the confidence to bid. And that's where we've seen the difference. So the uplift has come on the older cars, and touch, feel, see is definitely the key on those older cars. So there has definitely been an uplift in prices across the board on anything older and of a poorer grade. So yes, definitely.
Fascinating. I mean, I feel as though I could talk to you all day, really, Andy. But I've got to bring things to a close. And my final question really is, what makes Manheim different, particularly from your main competitors? What makes you guys stand out from the crowd?
Oh, I think I've used the word 3 times in this interview. It's choice.
Mm.
We've allowed people to have a choice. And it's not only us, many of our competitors have done the same. And I give credit to them as well, because we've recognized that auctions are really, really important. There's a place for online, but there's certainly a place for physical. And as we go forward, if you take away that choice, you take away the rights of the customer. So I think that's the big difference.
Mm.
And of course, the quality auctioneering.
Of course, yes, yes. Not naming no names, obviously, but
No, definitely not.
Andy, an absolute pleasure to chat to you today. Thank you so
And
much for
you,
joining us.
pleasure. Thank you very much.
Well, that's it for today's Car Dealer Live. Join us again very soon. Bye bye.